I told Orville and I told Wilbur, and now I'm telling you, that thing is never going to fly. And how many times have we been able to look at something and understand the situation and say, I've seen this show before, that is not going to happen. That is not possible. And in some cases, we are correct. There are some things that are not possible. Is it possible for me, just through thought, to transport myself instantaneously to a distant part of the planet?
Not yet.
Sure.
Not yet.
I do not know how to do this. But I don't know that it's impossible. It turns out that everything used to be impossible. If we believe in evolution, the Big Bang and everything, trees growing, the sun shining on the planet, atmosphere, it used to be impossible.
It's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen. I mean, atmosphere, how could that possibly happen? And yet, through the logical course of events, things that used to be impossible are now possible. One of my favorite stories, it was impossible for a human being to run a 4-minute mile. It had never, ever been done. And it wasn't because nobody tried. People have been trying to do that forever. The 4-minute mile was a barrier. It was impossible to cross that barrier. And then in 1954, Roger Bannister ran a 4-minute mile. And since then, 1,400 other people have run a 4-minute mile. That's what we mean when we say something is impossible. It means that 1,400 people are going to be able to do it, and it's not a thing anymore. For a while, it was impossible to fly faster than the speed of sound. And the reason we thought that it was impossible is because the earliest people who tried doing it, the planes broke, which, when you're going close to the speed of sound, is bad. That's how they described it locally. And then, I can imagine going 750 miles an hour and having the plane stop being an airplane was unpleasant. But then a new understanding came along of how it might be possible to do that, and now supersonic flight there are flights every day. It used to be civilian flights every day, now it's just military flights every day. They go faster than the speed of sound, and it's not that big a deal. Now, of course, we know it's impossible to travel faster than the speed of light. I'm not going, I told Orville and I told Wilbur. Because it might be possible. And what we define as impossible says more about us than it does about whatever it is that we're labeling impossible. It might not be something that I know how to do now. It might not be something that I am comfortable engaging in right now. It might be something where there's enough nuance in there that it's probably not worth doing. I don't know. Throughout history, there have been examples of things that became possible, and it turns out that that's really not a great thing to do. So most recently, I would say sharing all of your personal information on social media, expecting that it's going to be safe. We have a little growing to do in that area at this point, and that's become more and more apparent. Some people noticed early on, I'm not sure this is a good idea. And everybody said, it's fine. We will come to an equilibrium where we understand what's not just possible, but what's beneficial for us. So I got in this great conversation with with both of my daughters yesterday. One of them has a friend who's been having lots and lots of challenges. She grew up in the New Thought teaching. She was actually part of the teen group that I was running. So I know this particular person, and it's like she one thing after another happens to her. And so my daughter said, well, what is that? Is that karma? Why does that happen? It's like, I'm glad people don't, I'm happy when people don't ask me that question when it's about them, because the answer can sound pretty harsh. And it can sound like blame. It is not blame. It is not blame at all. The answer is always the same answer. It's always about consciousness. If somebody is the guy who's walking around with the cloud always over his head, or the Peanuts character, regardless of where he goes, there's a mess. Pigpen. That can be a very accurate way of describing somebody. Somebody has bad luck. You can say, oh, that's karma. That's something that happened, really difficult childhood, really challenging situation, health issues, whatever it happens to be. We can describe that and say, oh, that's the tendency that this person has towards these unhappy things in their lives. And then we come along and we say, well, it's consciousness. And the first response is, you mean I'm choosing this? Well, not intentionally. We got into this whole conversation about karma, that we're sent here to learn a lesson. And it's possible. I don't necessarily think that we have to live an entire lifetime to learn the lesson. My thought is more about that we are here as creatures of choice and of thought. And when we get into a pattern, we can identify the pattern or not, or we can just identify what it is we want to be experiencing instead, and set a new intention, invite something new into our lives, and have that transformational experience. We have this practitioner class, just finished the first year this week. And we had the opportunity, after 30 weeks of classes, to everybody share about what's different in their life now than a year ago. And it's amazing, because there wasn't the intention necessarily, oh, I'm going to do this, and then this, and then this, and then this, and then my life is going to be different. The intention was, this is what my life is like now. I know the tone and the texture of what it is that I want it to be. And then I'm going to do things that don't seem to have anything to do with that. When we get to the end of the year, and the growth and the transformation has been astounding. Now, the class is going to be here next week to share some of their experiences, so that's going to be absolutely awesome. The growth happens in consciousness. It's about setting an intention. It's about making an invitation to have something new happen. If we get into the conversation about karma, oh, somebody was born with this assignment to deal with something. I'm not going to discount that. That's possible. That might be very real. So, and as I was thinking about this, I thought about, of course, the Indy 500. Yeah, I'm sure you did too. Because in the Indy 500, there's a whole bunch of cars that are in the race, and they do qualifying to see who's going to get the first starting position and who's going to get the last starting position. I think there are 33 spots. And the first, number one qualifier gets the pole position. They're like on the inside, the front row when the race starts. And that is the preferred position to be starting the race, because that person is figuratively born with a silver spoon in their mouth. They have got all of the advantages. They have got all of the preference. And the person back in the last row is really behind the eight ball. But the Indy 500 is roughly 500 miles. A lot can happen in 500 miles. There is no guarantee that the fact that somebody started in the pole position means they're going to come across the finish line first. A lot of things can happen. It can happen in one lap. It can happen in a portion of a lap. It's one moment after another, after another, after another. So for me, karma is kind of like our pole position. There's a whole notion in New Thought about group consciousness, race consciousness we call it, which is the accumulated thought and belief of everybody on the planet now and everybody who has ever had a thought on the planet. That those thoughts are turning into beliefs, whether they're flimsy little, maybe kind of possibly beliefs, or absolutely firm, determined, this is what always happens sorts of beliefs. And we're born into this group consciousness where everybody believes these are the sorts of things that are possible. These are the sorts of things that are always going to happen. These are the sorts of things that are never going to happen. And because that's where we're starting, and that's the message that we keep on getting and we keep on getting, we tend to fit into that pattern. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's where culture comes from. That's where traditions come from. That's where all of the norms of society come from. We are not all freelancing how we want to interact. Although, as I see some people parking badly in my little town, I think maybe some more rules would be good. So we have these agreements, as Don Miguel Ruiz puts it in the 4 Agreements. We have these agreements about how we're going to live together, how we're going to interact together, what it is that we're going to do. And in the 4 Agreements, he talks about raising children as domesticating them, about taking these completely free spirits and teaching them how to conform to the norms of society. And on one hand, that's really good, because then we can be cohesive about what we're going to all do together. And the challenge that we run into in doing that is that some of that spontaneity, some of that belief in what was previously impossible can get drained out. So what we're doing is we're looking for a new balance point. What is it that we want to have happen in our lives? How is it that we want to engage with our culture, with our community, with each other, with our children, with our elders? Because we can keep doing what we've been doing. There's the invitation to continue doing what we've been doing, and that's perfectly okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But let us make sure that we're doing that because that's what we want, rather than that's what we've always done. Spent a fair amount of time as a business process consultant. And a business process consultant is somebody who goes in and as gently as possible tries to understand that's the way we've always done it, and then stop. Because that's the way we've always done it is a perfectly good reason for why we did it that way yesterday. That is never a good reason for why we're going to do it tomorrow. Always take that and look at it, because the way we've always done it, that might be a great way to do it. Or we might be looking at doing something different and repeating the same things over and over again, expecting a different result. Why, that's the definition of insanity. Not only is it probably not going to change anything, but it's mostly likely to get us frustrated because we want change to happen, but we are, in our own activities, blocking it. There's a great story in the Gospel of Mark where the disciples, who had all been trained to do healing prayer and perform miracles like Jesus did, so they were actually going around doing prayers and healing people. And there was a case of a boy, and judging from the description, he probably was epileptic, but they didn't use that term in the Bible because it's the Bible. And the disciples couldn't help him. They tried, but they couldn't help him. And Jesus came along and they said, "We can't do this." He says, "Bring the kid here." It's like, "Oh, okay." And Jesus healed him. And what he said, the disciples said, "Why couldn't we do that?" And he said, "It's because of your disbelief." They looked at that and they saw a mountain instead of a molehill. They saw something big. They saw something challenging or difficult. And because of their belief, they couldn't get past the fact that this kid was lying on the ground, writhing and foaming at the mouth and completely uncontrollable. Jesus was able to look that fact in the face, know the truth, and perform the healing, because that belief superseded all of the other beliefs. I think the phrase is, "Help me in my unbelief." I believe, help me in my unbelief. So there's the things that we believe. There's the things that we want to believe. And then if there's a difference between what we believe and what we want to believe, we need to go about actively changing what those beliefs are. I use the term invitation a lot when we want to invite something new into our experience. And I was working with somebody, we were talking about inviting something new into experience. And she says, "Well, how do I do that?" And I said, "Well, I don't know. Let's look at the words. If you were inviting somebody over, would you send them an invitation?" "Yeah." "It's okay. Write your perfect health an invitation. Dear perfect health, you are cordially invited to my body temple for a life filled with great energy, strength, flexibility, alignment, love, and joy. You, perfect health, are the crowning jewel in a life well lived and enjoyed. and I want you with me every step of the way. When you visit, I feel in balance, in divine order, with all the parts of my body working beautifully, gracefully in the world within, and interacting with the world outside of me. I am ageless and timeless in my enthusiasm, my mental, emotional, and physical health. I set aside any notion of aging and ill health. I welcome you to reside within my body temple, my perfect partner from now forward. Love me. So when I say invite something new into experience, it can be something really fluffy and spiritual. You could think that, oh, we need to go into meditation and find my purple pillow and fluff it up a little bit. Or you can write an invitation. If this situation of being unable to run a 4-minute mile is something that I want to transcend, how am I going to invite that 4-minute mile into my experience? Or whatever thing has seemed impossible up until now. There are definitely limitations. There are absolutely limitations in our physical world. It might be possible that I could instantaneously teleport myself to a different place on the planet or to a different part of the galaxy. Instantaneously, and nothing to do with the speed of light, the speed of thought, the speed of now. It is completely possible that at some point with some understanding I'll be able to do that. There are probably some implications to that. Don't know what they are, don't know what the limitations are, don't know what the constraints are. Here's one that comes to mind. If the whole idea for us to be here as humans, as with the understanding that there's one power and presence that's God itself, and that creative power and presence, that intelligence, that love, that potentiality is sharing itself with us individually, so that we can have these individual experiences, so that I can go through my life here on planet Earth, learning from what's happened previously, making new choices and new creativities, and being able to do things that if I were omniscient, I couldn't do. I can never be surprised by a punchline. I could never fall in love. I could never get into a fight. I could never have a discussion where we're trying to work out between two differing opinions, which is the greater truth, lowercase t. If I were omniscient, I couldn't do all of those things. As a human, I have the ability to do that. It's possible that in the process of being able to teleport myself from here to any place in the universe instantaneously, I lose that. In which case, that's game over, because there's no reason for us to be here when we are actually completely, eternally, and always aware of the oneness. There might be a good reason that we're here in this place at this time having this experience with these yearnings, with these desires, with these hopes, so that as different parts of that one creation rub up against each other, we get some friction, we get some heat, and we generate the awareness that there is this rich, divine, infinite love possible for us. Nothing makes you notice the light more than being in the dark for a while. You look outside today, absolutely gorgeous spring day. And I woke up really early this morning. It was already light. Summer solstice is coming really soon. These are the really long summer days. I remember the really long winter nights. There's something wonderful about that too. But we have the opportunity to see what's available to us now and embrace it and enjoy it and appreciate it and get that perspective and that tone into our lives from that. And if we want, invite something new. So regardless of what it is that's calling to you, whatever that whisper is, whatever that nudge is about what's next, what's new, what's coming for you, the answer is going to be yes. So take the opportunity to write it down. Once it's here, what's it look like? Then create an invitation. Write an invitation to that good and invite it into your life. And then see if something comes up and says, that can possibly happen. Because that notion of it's impossible is just like that guy telling Orville and Wilbur that it's not going to fly. That is your disbelief. So invite in your disbelief so that you can transcend your disbelief. And the good that's seeking you is coming into your life now. So it is.
It is.